You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Global Trade This Week. I am Pete Mento, and with me is my good friend, Doug Draper. We're both on at the same time this week. I'm sorry, everyone, that it was Bring Your Son to Work week last week, and Doug and I didn't want to bring a kid, so we brought the next best thing, which is our underage intern producer / guy who keeps the lights on, Keenan. Thank you, Keenan, for stepping in and doing, I guess, what can be considered a mediocre junior varsity job of keeping the show going when I wasn't on. That was very sweet of you. And Doug, thank you, of course, for keeping the ship afloat, buddy.
Yeah.
You having a good time?
Yeah, no problem. I'll give Keenan some kudos. Literally, it was about 2 minutes before we were going to start, and we're like, "What are you going to talk about? Let's roll with it." That's the beauty of the show. It's not scripted, and we just rock and roll. So it worked out well.
Yeah, I was going to make some jokes about the abbreviated length of it. There's only so long you can talk to somebody that age. But you do what you got to do.
Yeah,
I understand.
Yeah,
you do what you had to do.
Yeah, for sure. So.
Yeah. Well, an exciting week of topics. But before we do that, I just, I don't know if you're going to hit it on halftime, but we have really been, you and I have just been assaulted in the news with all the stuff we're getting right.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that they're just over and over. We need to do a show where we just do a greatest hits of all the things that we call months and months and months in advance. I think it's something.
Yeah, I love it. I was joking today, like we don't want to pat ourselves on the back too much, but honest to goodness, I mean, it's true. We've nailed a couple of big ones, and it's exciting. So yeah, we'll have to figure that out, a greatest hits, if you will. But you're only as good as your last win. So hopefully we'll keep them moving forward. So
very true, very true, Mr. Drew.
So.
All right. So with that, my friend, I did the open, and as you know, that means that you won the coin toss. You have elected to receive.
Yeah.
So, my friend, why don't you hit us with the first topic?
Awesome. All right. This is dabbling a little bit into politics, so I gotta back it off, right? But it's politics, transportation equals California, right? It seems like every other day there's something coming out of that state related to regulation. So the one that caught my attention, this is maybe a week ago. Is called AB 701, and AB stands for Assembly Bill. So if anybody hears Assembly Bill out in California, be prepared. So this one is really, it's directed to Amazon. Nobody's trying to cover that up, and it's really going to impact warehouses in general. And essentially, AB 701, it's kind of to regulate the activities in final mile warehouses. So employees that are hired, right, meaning warehouse employees, must be given all expectations of their job performance, and in Amazon's world, that's called quotas. And they also have to be identified the consequences if the worker fails to meet those performance levels. So the big thing there is now that it's documented, it can be regulated. So the thing there is that employees may not or can't be expected to meet quotas that are set if they need to follow OSHA requirements and the amount of time that they can work on a line and all these other type of things that go on. So any other demands that are required outside of the control of Amazon related to OSHA or different employee type of benefits. So that's kind of the rub. It's like, listen, you set up these quotas, and if I don't hit them, I could get laid off or sanctioned. But I can't meet them because I can only work so many hours a day. OSHA prevents me from standing in this place for a certain amount of time, things of that nature. So I think it's just ripe for litigation, right? In the sense that there's going to be a lot of back and forth of, I couldn't do this because of that. No, we provided a safe work environment, and so you should have met your quota, So beyond all that political stuff, Pete, because this is a supply chain and logistics show, I think what that means for California is two things. One, people are going to say, this is nuts, I'm out of here, right? So I think you're going to see an increase in customers leaving the California and the Southern California market specifically. We've already seen that a little bit into Arizona. Reno's always been a hot spot for e-commerce. And the other thing I think is going to happen is that the 3PL opportunities in Southern California are going to explode, because it's a hell of a lot easier for me to apply pressure to my 3PL to meet my customer, my expectations and the number of orders that I need to get out and things of that nature. And I don't have to worry about the individual employee. That's your problem, 3PL. So I think you're going to see a lot of companies say, forget AB 701. I don't have time to deal with this. We're out of here to another state. Or you're going to see a rise in third-party warehouse engagements where the customer can apply pressure to the 3PL to bypass AB 701, but still accomplish the rules and the target numbers they need with throughput. So anyway, that's my two takes on that one.
Yeah, you make a great point with all that. It's funny, I missed the Labor Day, the Labor Day opportunity for us to talk about Labor Day, and what has been a very difficult trend for Amazon, which is both fending off organized labor inside of their organization, and also dealing with the backlash, the public backlash of the inability for organized labor to take a foothold at Amazon. My grandfather, amongst many other things, was a Teamster. And, those of us who work in this industry, if you've had anything to do with ocean freight, anything to do with air freight, and anything to do with over-the-road trucking, you've dealt with unions. When I was a young man, my very first job, probably in air freight, I would say, when I was working for AEI, anyone that wasn't in management was a Teamster working with us there in Boston. And it was a union shop. That also was the case in the warehouse as well. They collectively bargained, they managed their relationship with management at a very hardline level, and they also worked as one when it came to trying to get regulations passed. That hasn't been something that people have gotten a very good toehold on with regards to this environment of trying to deliver something quickly and trying to deliver it now. So we're beginning to see the legislative process take the place where unions have been unable to. And I think that this is sort of a reach to try to find a common ground where employees and where labor is concerned, to try to stop some of these what sound like horrendous working conditions for some of these people in these warehouses. I think you're spot on, Doug, that what we're going to end up seeing come out of this is outsourcing not only to 3PLs, but maybe to smaller companies that specialize just in distribution and just in fulfillment in order to get around these rules for these companies. And I also wonder if you're not going to see companies start to get engaged at the borders of California, up and down on the eastern side of the state, as well as on the southern border with Mexico, in order to be able to fulfill this stuff and able to also escape some of these labor issues and concerns that come along with it. I think bills like this, what it might end up doing is actually forcing labor outside the United States, which might even have an even worse working condition to do things and even higher standards and even more complicated and difficult to stay compliant. So we'll see. This might end up backfiring where they had been hoping to help people in the first place.
Yeah, well, the last thing on that one, I don't think Gavin Newsom has signed off on it or even made a statement on it as of late, and that could be related to his recall election and all that kind of stuff going on. So who knows? But it just caught my attention. If you can't, anyway, it's an interesting topic that should be important to follow. So we'll leave it at that. I'm going to put my foot in my mouth if I talk about that too much. So let's jump over to your first topic. Pete, let her rip.
Yeah, I forwarded you guys an email on this. I posted about it on LinkedIn, and we all saw it coming. It was only a matter of time. Why do we need container ships to move containers? We'll just use another kind of ship. And it's reminiscent of all those memes that we see of some guy in a canoe with a 20-footer on it, and he's got like an outboard motor moving it between two little islands someplace. But in this instance, it's bulk carriers. It's the Chinese bulk carriers that are either loaded containers on the top deck, on the main deck of a vessel, or they're lashing down containers inside of bulk carriers and moving them along. And there's a lot that's being said about this. Wow, have things gotten that crazy? How much money could they possibly be making, or how much could they be charging if they're making money on it? I'm not going to talk about that. What I'm going to talk about instead is who's insuring this. I took my first Marine cargo class when I was a freshman at Maine Maritime Academy. I mostly passed it because my roommate Jack was really good at taking notes. I think I I learned most of that entire class the night before my final exam. And then, of course, my third class and my second class year, we got deep into container vessel stowage. But something they teach deck officers, and they teach a lot of it to us, is what's called vessel stability, and the ability for us to properly load plan containers, which is mostly done now by the carriers themselves, in order to make the vessel heavy on the bottom so that it sits well, is fuel efficient, but more importantly, it's safe. And I don't know if these bulk vessels were either properly designed for or are going to be able to withstand the types of vessel stability complications that will come from lashing containers to it. And my big question, Doug, is how are insurance companies going to react when they start to hear about this? Who's going to insure the vessels and who's going to insure the cargo?
Yeah, that's a good point. You got the novelty of, it's a great picture, it's a great meme. It likens pictures of a guy on a bicycle that has stuff stacked 9 stories tall in the back and making it through the crowd. But like you said, beyond that, I think Incoterms, people may not even really understand. Our audience is well educated and they get that, but I think you're spot on with the insurance and who takes the possession and the liability when and where. We could dive into that all day long, but I had not thought of that, Pete. I was focused more on the novelty of it, but you're spot on. I don't think it'll last very long because of exactly what you said. Hey, let's throw some stuff on here and get it across the pond. And then they're going to take a step back and see, wow, that was pretty risky, and is the juice worth the squeeze, so to speak? So that is definitely interesting.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to halftime for Global Trade this week.
Yes.
And I did have 2 quick things, if you don't mind.
Fire away.
Quick thing 1, right here, baby. Saints victorious week 1. And, yes, my love of football and all things New Orleans, I wear it on my sleeve, generally also over my bald head. But for this particular week, I just wanted to send a shout out to everybody in 2 places. One, all over Louisiana. It's been a tough couple of weeks for many of you who have not, the news cycle has already swept past it, but most of the people I know in Louisiana still don't have power, Doug. They're getting it back in drips and drabs. So we're talking, they're going over 2 weeks now in Louisiana in September, where it is regularly in the high 80s, low 90s, very high humidity, without air conditioning, no power, taking cold showers, just trying to get by. No gasoline to run generators. It's really bad. And they're getting by and they're making it through because that's what our peoples do. And then the second thing about that particular story is, of course, now the Gulf Coast of Texas is getting smacked with another storm. Logistics has a lot to do with weather. A lot of things we just can't control. And it just seems like it's always popping up out of nowhere, and we're dealing with it. And the second thing I wanted to talk about, it seems like I always hit you with that Casey Kasem bad news thing that you've got to say something funny with afterwards. I'm wearing my Leal t-shirt today. Yeah. Anthony Bourdain, his restaurant in New York. It used to be my favorite restaurant in the world. Many of you know that Chef Bourdain had a little bit too much and decided to punch his ticket a couple of years ago. And this is the 2nd anniversary this week of a good friend of mine who was a veteran. And also we have a lot of people right now that are struggling with the facts of what's going on in Afghanistan. Doug and I both do a lot of government work. I do a lot of military work, and I'm hearing a lot from people who are pretty upset about what's going on there. And from what I'm reading in the news, it is having an effect. So if you know anyone out there, there are 2 organizations, 22 Kill, which is, I believe it's called We're All Brothers now, but 22 Kill, as well as the Suicide Prevention Hotline. If you know anybody who needs help, if you need help, you can always call them at 800-273-8255. I don't think it's enough that we talk about. Every 22 minutes, there's a veteran in America that decides that it's too much. There's people out there who love you and they want to help you. And with that, let's see if Doug can make this thing lighter for the second half of halftime.
In Casey Kasem,
what am I supposed to do with this?
I don't know. Well, actually, this one is better than last week. The milk crate, or 2 weeks ago with the milk crate challenge. But this is the long distance dedication, as Casey would say. But I want to talk about National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. It's happening now, right?
Yes.
And this week's a way to show appreciation to. There's about 3.5 million professional men and women that are delivering goods safely, securely, on time, and it's the unsung heroes. In my work here at ACME Distribution, we probably have 100 plus drivers coming through our facilities every single day. They work hard. You see them out there, and they are the unsung heroes. If it's on the shelf, a truck probably brought it. I think that's a term that's been used out there. And gosh, I don't know what to say enough about that group of men and women that are out there hounding it every single day, getting it done. And there's been a hell of a lot of stress put on them in the last 18 months with the pandemic and the requirements when they walk into new facilities that are trying to be compliant with COVID standards. So I just wanted to make sure that our audience was aware this is National Truck Driving Appreciation Week. And in the spirit of all the young children out there, if you see a truck driver pull one of these this week, give them a shout out because it's well deserved. So channel your inner child and take care of those men and women out there. They work hard.
So yeah, speaking of young children, Keenan, if you heard that, go ahead when you're riding on your tricycle, you go ahead and you give it a pull there when you see a trucker. All kidding aside, Doug, yeah, we don't say enough about that. And it gets to the point where people start to think that we're just being, facetious or trite, but it is absolutely crucial that we let people know how hard a job it is, how difficult it is, a little respect that they got for years and years, and how we need to work harder to make sure that they're getting the working conditions that they deserve. So yeah, man, thanks so much for shouting that out. That was awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
That brings us to number 3.
Yeah.
For my boy Doug.
Yeah, so this one, I couldn't think of the right catchphrase for this one, Pete. So the first one was Big Box doing it for themselves, which is a play on some song I think was out there back in the 80s. And then this one I'm taking way back to the 70s, so some of our older audience. There was a movie out called Network, I think, and there was a famous line that said, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." And this whole point of this little rant is that Big Box is kind of done. They're mad as hell and they're not taking anymore, and trying to drive their deliveries, their supply chain through third-party providers. They're starting to take things on to their own selves. They're kind of creating their own rails and turning things vertical. Amazon has done that with their own drivers. They've opened up their own airport terminals outside of Cincinnati, their sort centers. They're getting into airplanes, for God's sakes. They're doing some lease agreements. And I think that there's even a few planes that Amazon actually owns outright. So Amazon's the trendsetter with that goes. But, Target's acquired companies. I think there was one, or I don't think there's one called Deliv, D-E-L-I-V, which basically defines routing for trucks. They bought a final mile delivery company called Shipped, so they can route their own stuff. They can deliver their own stuff. Walmart's purchased a group called Joyrun, which makes deliveries. So I think you're going to see more technology investments and more acquisitions because the big guys got a lot of freight. Consumer trends are not changing, and there's just not enough capacity in the parcel, LTL, and full truck world. And you can't sit around and complain about it. You got to do something about it. And they have the deep pockets in order to do it. So here's the cool thing, or the interesting thing. So here's what Amazon did domestically. You have Walmart and Target and Home Depot kind of following suit. But the big baller in the room is always Amazon. They bought some airplanes. They're leasing planes. They are going to get into the ocean freight business. They've already purchased and acquired a broker. And I know that you were aware of that. But somewhere, somehow, it's been too quiet. And they're going to align, purchase, lease substantial capacity in the ocean freight world in the near term, in my opinion. And Pete, when that happens, whether it's 6 days, 6 weeks, or 6 months down the road, we're going to flash it up on the screen and say that you and I called it right here. But people and these big guys they're going to own the rails. They're going to vertically integrate what they're doing because they cannot rely on a overcrowded, overburdened, and just crazy service providers out there that just can't get the job done. So I think you're going to see more of it, and I think Amazon's going to be the trend center, and they're going to come up with a home run. They're going to call their shots, and you're going to see them getting into the ocean freight business hard and heavy.
Yeah, I think that you're going to think about how much cash those companies have.
Yeah.
Think about the kind of cash that Alibaba or Amazon has. And if they wanted to make a run at a major U.S. freight forwarder or a major freight forwarder, they could. What are the shareholders going to say if they get some outrageous offer per share price? It's been a long time since the 80s, right? When we had corporate raiders that were going in there and doing hostile takeovers. But honestly, if they just decided one day they wanted to buy one of these majors, they got the cash to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a major shareholder of one of these companies, what are you going to say if somebody comes in with like, you know, a 25 or 30% per price share? You know, they're going to vote yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a matter of time kind of a thing. I feel like you're setting me up to try to make an announcement here, but that's not going to happen next week. But, you know, I myself am about to become intimately involved in this particular topic, and we'll talk about that next week. So there's a teaser for everybody on Global Trade this week. If it's not buying and acquiring companies, it's going to be developing technology. Where people are not developing the technology, it's going to be building it. And something I don't think that, when you look at Amazon, did they acquire some stuff? Yeah, but they also built a lot of their software. They built their own customs house brokerage. They built a lot of this. They went out there and they did what freight forwarders do. They decided on the routes that were important. They acquired capacity and they ran with it. And that can be the same for a lot of other e-commerce companies that I will not talk about because I don't want to give away anything right now. Mm-hmm. But these companies are working very hard in a tight market that's gone absolutely bananas to try to deal with these issues. And you're right, Doug. The madness right now of what it costs to acquire a company, the multiples of EBITDA that people are asking for, just because they're making great money right now in a crazy market, they're going to quiet down. And when they do, these companies that are making tons and tons of money on e-commerce are going to have big bulging bank accounts, and shareholders are going to say, go buy them now. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, buddy, someone's going to buy one of these big ones.
Yeah, I agreed. You know, one of the things we called our shot a couple months ago, and we talked about the acquisition frenzy that's going to come up, and supply chain logistics is the new darling, right? Echo Global Logistics was just bought. The EBITDA, I think it was 11x valuation, which is a little bit higher than normal. So you're spot on, man. We're in agreement. So we just got to wait, and hopefully it'll happen within 6 months, or our predictions are out the door. But anyway, bring us home on your last topic, my friend. What do we got?
Yeah, so going with my Debbie Downer theme, on the 20th anniversary of 9/11, I would be remiss as one of the only people who's written books about and all these lectures and magazine articles and newspaper articles about 9/11 and cargo security, if I didn't take a swipe at CTPAT while at the same time giving it a big old hug. The Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism has been a generally an effective program at securing our supply chain, in as much as it has normally been a program that has, let's just call it what it is. It's given people privileges without them having to do any real work. Mm-hmm. And it's allowed people to have benefits without making significant investments. Now, there's some changes that are happening now in that CTPAT is being rolled into the ISA program together for an opportunity for people to have both compliance and cargo security benefits, which, by the way, I was saying 7 or 8 years ago was going to happen to the detriment of both programs, but whatever, making it closer to the AEO programs that we see in every other part of the world. CTPAT will not be effective until a number of things happen. Number one, they got to start throwing people out. When you have major shipping lines that have hundreds of millions of dollars of narcotics found on their ships, but they're still allowed to be in CTPAT. When you have very, very large retailers who have drugs found on their cross-border shipments, but they're allowed to stay in the program. When you have individual companies who decide to just leave, but they're never asked why or what they could have done to have been kept in. Simply put, until we have a tax credit, dollar for dollar, for every penny that you spend on cargo security, companies aren't going to take this seriously. There needs to be more than just these promises of what it's going to get you. Statistically speaking, CTPAT has not been the promise kept that we were all told it would be on April 22nd, 2002, when it was rolled out to everyone. We have to commit to making it a real cargo security program. And doing that means less customs people from these big companies and more security people who know how to actually secure the supply chain. And with that, I will stop talking before I get both of us in trouble with the rules.
Yeah, I think I would agree 100%. I think the fact taking it from the broker, the compliance aspect to true security is where it needs to go. But when I was looking at this one, the incredible burden of compliance and the amount of paperwork. I mean, every single person listening to the show, and Pete, you probably know 20 of them, that said, I'm going to be a consultant on how to do CTPAT right after 9/11 is astronomical. And it was literally pushing paper and checking boxes, which is what was needed at the time. We're doing something, right? We're doing something to secure our supply chain. But when it's all said and done, the amount of time, effort, consulting fees, yeah, you got your document, but it didn't mean a whole lot because of all the reasons you just laid out more eloquently than I could. But yeah, it has to change. And I think hey, we'll do all this compliance. In exchange for that, our freight's going to move quicker. We're going to be treated special, and we're going to bypass, kind of like the TSA lines and clear that it wasn't commensurative. I always come up with these big words, Pete, and I always forget it. But it wasn't commensurate with the amount of effort put into the reward that was gained from the individual companies. So it's got to be not necessarily blown up, but adjusted, as you just said. I agree 100%. So,
all right, buddy.
All right. I guess with that, we'll just, you had a topic that you were going to get in a little bit of trouble. I had a topic that I was going to get in a little bit of trouble. And the beauty of us is we know when to say when and move on. So I think with that, we'll wrap it up for this week. As always, Cap Logistics and Keenan and his team produce this, get it out to the world, and allow you to see the truth that Pete and I speak every single week. So I want to thank them for their diligent efforts. And Pete, always want to thank you for joining me and making this a good show. And I think that's it. So we'll call it a wrap for this week.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you next one.
All right. Let's go, Saints, go.
All right,
go, Saints,
everybody. Take care.
See ya.